We are live. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay tonight. My voice is a little crackly. I'm getting over a cold. Actually, it sounds better now than it has in a while. So again, if you guys are just joining me, I'm just getting over a cold and I apologize for a raspy voice tonight. But I wanted to start out, if you guys see over here on, I guess that would be my left, your right of the screen right here. Gary was just saying that there's some fires up in Canada, and which is, I was just reading a couple articles on it. I'm so in my own little world that I didn't even know this was going on. But before we get started, I want to read through this article. I want to ask you guys if you can hear me. I want to do a quick audio test and ask you if this sounds okay, what you're hearing right now, or does it sound better? So this would be option one, and here's option two. This is option two. So which sounds better, option one or option two? So this is option two, and again, here is option one. So there is option one right there. So let me know if option one sounds better, or again, here's option two right here. Option two. Is option one better or option two? This is two. Let me know if option one or two is better, so that way I can make sure. Back to option one for now. So sounds just fine with option one is best, full bodied. Okay, so we'll stick with option one. Okay, great. So what's up, Ryan, Gary, Bob, a couple of our regulars. If you have not joined us before, we take heating and air questions live. You just put it in the chat, and usually thanks, Brian again. What's up, buddy? But we usually have some other pros on here. I think Brian is one. I think Bob used to do this. He now gets to sleep in every day. I don't know if he does or not, but he could if he wanted to, I think. And again, I'm getting over a cold, so apologize if I clear my throat in your ear a bunch of times tonight. But I want to get started before we start answering questions. If you do have a question, a heating and air question, again, please add that to the chat. But Gary was posting about the fires up in Canada, and again, I must be in my own little world because I didn't even understand that this was going on. It says millions of people in the eastern United States faced unhealthy air quality conditions on Tuesday as smoke from wildfires in the eastern Canada wafts over much of the country. Sorry, I don't know I'm not familiar with that word. That's not something we say in the South. Wafts over the country. An air quality advisory was in effect for several regions of New York State on Tuesday. Air monitoring stations on Tuesday afternoon in some parts of New York City showed measures considered unhealthy for anyone. New York City ranked 7th among major cities in the worst air quality worldwide as of around 6 p.m. And this is sort of a little map, I guess they're showing, of the air quality areas. And it looks like right there, what area is that? Just north of the Great Lakes. Just southwest of Montreal. So looks like that's the area that most of these fires are happening. Looks around the Toronto area, maybe just east of Toronto. So pretty crazy there. Let's see. Says try to limit your outdoor activities today to the absolute necessities, says the city's mayor, Eric Adams. It marked the second day of hazy skies across a wide swath of the country. Smoke blanketed the landscape from the Ohio Valley to as far as the Carolinas on Monday. Air quality advisories were in effect Monday in southeastern Minnesota and parts of upper peninsula of Michigan, as well as in more than 60 counties in Wisconsin on Monday. More smoke was expected Wednesday in New York City. Quote, smoke and haze from wildfires across eastern Canada will continue working into the region this evening. And Where's that? Oh, it says some 414 fires were burning in Canada as of Tuesday evening, including 239 considered to be out of control, according to Canadian Interagency, etc. So, yeah, Gary, I'm sorry to hear that, pal. Again, I guess I'm in my own little world down here and did not realize this was even going on. I don't watch the news a lot. There's never anything good on there, so I don't watch it a whole lot. I'll usually peek in every now and then just to kind of stay up on things and make sure, I'm up on certain matters. But I had no idea about this, so I apologize on that. But yeah, what a crazy time and deal that you guys are dealing with there. Let's get to our chat here. Looks like you guys are already rolling in. Again, I'm sorry. I'm going to be clearing my throat a lot tonight, guys. I'm just getting over a cold. Cast 1070 says, hi, what's your opinion on Zone's system? My installer on my new system, Carrier Infinity 18 SEER, because one side of the house is still hotter than the other side of the house. So, Cast, I just did a video on this. Sorry, I'm fixing one thing here with my camera. I just did a video on this. You should check out. I'm trying to remember what it's called, but it basically answers whether or not your problem is a zoning issue or it's a ductwork issue, because sometimes it is misdiagnosed even by pros, on accident at times. And so, a lot of times folks will think, well, if I replace my heating and air system, it'll fix a ductwork or a zoning issue, only to find that after they've spent all this money that they're still having an issue. So, definitely check that video out, and I can try to look up the exact title here. Give me just a second here, but I go through how to basically self-diagnose it on whether or not it's a ductwork or a zoning issue. Bear with me, guys. Here it is. Here it is. So that, of course, my TV is going to start playing the video. The video is called Hot Room Solution, Zoning or Ductwork Theory. So again, try that. Check that video out. It might answer your question. I think zoning is great in certain situations, but I think it's unnecessary in other situations when it's actually a ductwork issue. And sometimes it is misdiagnosed. Sometimes it is a zoning issue. Sometimes it's a ductwork issue. Brian says, what 100% solar ductless do you use? I haven't had to install any yet. So solar's just now. I think we've got a neighbor that just put solar on their house. I'm starting to see more of it. I don't have a go-to yet. I think we've put a couple one-to-ones in, but I would probably I probably would be looking at the fit, possibly if the system could hold it. I like the Daikin fit for a number of reasons, and I've done videos on that, but I don't know if that answers your question. Sounds like BS to me. Nice name. To tell you the truth, I didn't even notice much difference on my phone, but the volume does seem to be a little low. Yeah, so the option that I'm using now does sometimes, I don't know if you're saying this option's lower or if the other option was lower, but this one controls the volume automatically better. And I wanted to try it with the other one just real quick. Bob says wafts or wafts means spreads all over the place. Nova Scotia was in bad shape. Oh, that's such a shame. Hopefully everybody's okay. Again, I have not been following all that. So Ryan says Mikey Pipes installed a ductless mini split using R32 refrigerant Atmosphera 12K heat pump on his channel. Looks like one of the first R32 installs I've seen from an HVAC YouTuber. It begins. Yeah, Ryan. Actually, Mikey's not the first. I saw a guy. Shoot, what is his name? There's a guy that got his hands on one of those Atmospheras before anybody, or at least anybody I knew, and um, shoot, English Heating and Air is the name of his company, and I'm drawing a blank on what his name is, but I've met him at some of the Daikin stuff. Daikin, I met him at AHR, and I had seen him at a conference that Daikin did. But yeah, Mikey actually messaged that to me, and looked like a nice install too. The Atmosphera, aside from the new refrigerant, is a nice product. It's got a really high SEER rating. It's got a really high performance, and it's just a really good product, regardless of what refrigerant it's using. Randy says, I have a question. I'm considering replacing my package AC unit next summer, and I live in a mobile home. Are there any residential units that could be used in a mobile home instead of mobile home brands? So, Randy, you are going to have to do an electric furnace made for a mobile home. The reason is it will be installed in what we call a high static application. Mobile homes typically have smaller ductwork, and they also have ventilation techniques that a typical house might not have. And so because of that, we usually see them have some sort of mobile home furnace. And I say electric furnace, it could be gas, but usually if it's electric, you can still pair it with a coil and any brand heat pump. You want to try to make sure it's an AHRI match if possible. But even if it's not, just make sure that the coil and the outdoor unit match. And, it's going to pull more air across that coil, which is why it's good to have something matching there. But the brands don't necessarily have to match for it to be an AHRI match. So I like, we've done a bunch of the Bosch units. So we have customers that will literally have an electric furnace with a straight AC outdoor unit. So if they're running in heat, they're burning electricity, heat strips all winter long. And we've put in those Bosches matched with an electric furnace that only comes on periodically on super cold nights. And those Bosches, I've had customers tell me that they've saved as much as $450 per month. I'll say that again. $450 off of their electric bill by doing two things. They switch to a heat pump from the straight AC. So that alone, now they're running off a heat pump in the winter time, and then they put in that high SEER system, and they've saved tons of money. So I had one lady tell me that the extra cost to go up to the Bosch and heat pump, she saved it back within 2 or 3 months. 3 months it paid for itself. And so she's been a happy camper. She loves us. Whenever I see her, I remember the first time I ever met her, she was a grouchy, she, just had her walls up. She was grumpy and very direct towards me. And by the time, it came around to do her first maintenance on that system, she was not grumpy anymore. She was singing our praises and just couldn't be any nicer. So the walls were down at that point. So she's a really nice lady now. She was always nice, but those walls are up. Gary says the sun had a copper cast on everything. Even my grass looked orange. Wow, man, that is crazy. Take pictures of that. You might look back on this moment, a decade from now and tell stories about it. You remember that time, those wildfires? I mean, I don't know. I don't want to make too light of it. I've been guilty of that before, and folks tell me that I'm making fun of them. I actually had a couple threaten to sue me a couple months ago by making light of their situation. So I don't want to make too light of it, but yeah, you should take pictures of it, orange grass, especially. Nicholas says all furnaces able to have high CFMs. All furnaces are able to have high CFM. I'm not sure what that means, Nicholas, but not all furnaces are meant for high static applications. That's simply not true. We have seen, companies install air handlers in mobile homes only to have multiple motor failures and other issues with airflow across the coil, because it's not meant for high static. Only the downflow electric furnaces are meant for that application. You cannot put an air handler in there. Well, you can. Companies do it all the time. And then the homeowner is the one that ends up paying for it because the company didn't know better. Gary says, no worries, Josh, on not knowing. Thanks for your kind thoughts. Of course, man. I mean, that's just tough to hear. Nicholas says, I'm not using my upstairs bedrooms anymore. Just going to use an attic space. Does it need any venting? I don't mind if it's hot. Is that okay? Depends on your home. I mean, if you imagine a regular attic, most of them do have some sort of circulation of air through there for a number of reasons. But if nothing else, just having that extremely hot area above your downstairs, a lot of homes don't insulate from the upstairs to the downstairs. So just keep that in mind. But every house is different, so I can't say for sure. As long as you're keeping that in mind, though, and maybe leave your heat and air system, maybe leave it at like a high temperature so it barely runs. It only kicks on those extreme temperature days, but it does still kick on from time to time. Just a thought. Brian says hotspot is 32 SEER, 100% solar. Nice. Randy says it would depend on what you plan on storing in the space, because some things are meant to be stored between certain temperature ranges. So that's something you need to consider. That's another good point. Brian says refrigerant's not an issue. Nicholas says, is it illegal to use refrigerant still in Ontario, Canada? My technician said he can't, but he did anyhow for me. Nicholas, I'll be completely honest with you. I'm not familiar with Canadian laws. If you do think what he's telling you might be untrue, I would get a second opinion. I could tell you in the United States, as long as that refrigerant was not imported or distributed or manufactured after it was meant to be. So, for example, if you were talking about R22, if you had an old jug of R22 in your garage, you are still allowed to use it as long as it's not something that you imported. We just did a video. I don't know if it's come out yet or not. Yeah, it did. It came out this week on these companies that got in trouble with the EPA down here in the United States. They were importing refrigerants that had been banned, and they got in a lot of trouble for it. So, but that does not cover, you're kind of grandfathered when you have something that, you already have. You already bought it years ago and it's been sitting in your garage, and you have a system and you put that in there, you're allowed to do that. So as long as you do everything you're supposed to do, but you still have to do your best to not let it, emit into the atmosphere. And, if you have to reclaim it, doing all the proper techniques with that. Randy says, Ralph, I think is who you are missing. I think is who you are meaning. I'm not sure what that means. Brian says Bosch works well. I'm using Agree now. Yeah, Brian, I was told that by Agree rep that you could not pair those Grees with an electric furnace in a mobile home like you can the Bosch. So he said it can only be paired with, Agree air handler. I don't know if that's true or not. That's just what he told me. The Bosch's, the way they work, there's no communicating technology. And the Agree doesn't have communicating technology to the thermostat. But if there's any sort of communicating technology between the indoor and outdoor units, sort of like you would see with a mini split, then he would be correct. You would not be able to use it with a mobile home. But I'm not familiar enough with the Agree Flex to know whether or not it's similar to the Bosch technology-wise. Ryan says, not sure about the quality of the brand, but I saw that ACIQ makes a heat pump with extreme heat kit that is an inverter made for mobile homes. Also has a 12-year warranty. Interesting. ACIQ. I wonder if that's one of the Nordyne brands. Let's take a look. ACIQ. Let's see. Let you guys bump over here with me. And I'll turn the ringtone off of my phone. Good looking website. See if we can tell who owns this company. And I can't. Usually if it was a Nordyne brand, it would say... Sorry, guys. Like I say, I'm getting over a cold. Normally a Nordyne brand would actually say, Nortec Global or something like that down here at the bottom. So this brand does not say that. But I would guess ACIQ. I would very much guess that somebody's manufacturing this brand. It's probably being relabeled, and I'm not seeing anything that jumps out at me telling me who they are manufactured by. And we don't have this brand local to me. I've never heard of it. So AC. Who owns ACIQ? One HVAC Energy is part of a family of companies with 80 years of industry and a long reputation of putting customers first. They own ACIQ as well as a number of other quality brands. I was hoping we might be able to kind of narrow that down. Let's see if we can look up this company. One HVAC Energy. Here we go. I was hoping we could find the brand there. I don't know. We've started down a rabbit hole here, haven't we? Maybe you guys will know in the comments who makes this brand. But it looks like they make a couple other brands there. Let's go back to our chat here. Yeah, maybe one of you guys know ACIQ. I am not familiar with them. Brian says, I have one already dual fuel, over 400 in the winter, older people. Brad says, would you recommend repair a leaking coil on a 12-year-old Arco air system, or is it time to replace? Brad, that's hard to say, buddy. If you've had a lot of issues, that might tell you a story. If you haven't had many issues and it has 410A refrigerant and not R22 refrigerant, maybe you might decide to try to get a little more life out of it. Obviously some companies are going to immediately try to sell you a new system, but if you can get the coil and, it's not too expensive to get it replaced, and you haven't had many issues with it, it's hard for me to say. 12 years is right there on that line. If you said 15 years, I'd go one way. And if you said 10 years, I might go the other, but you're kind of right there in the middle somewhere. So, I think the way I would reword your question back to you is, would you want to put, $2,000 or $2,500 into a 12-year-old system? And only you can answer that. Brian says up and down is sound insulation. Oopie Stevie. What's up, Stevie? I don't think I've seen your name on our show before, so howdy. Any issues with any Bosch systems in your area? Are they still performing well? With the systems we've put in, I've had a few indoor fan motors fail. That's it. We had one one board go bad, but that was only because a worm had climbed up in there. So I can't blame Bosch for that. We had one drain pan failure, but that was because of whoever installed it. It was not us. Had cracked the pan when they installed it. That's the only issues I can think of off the top of my head. Let's see. We had, like I was describing earlier, we had a customer with an electric furnace and a coil on top of it and a Bosch outdoor unit. The indoor coil was not a Bosch, and that indoor coil had a leak. So again, not Bosch's fault. Brian says Gree is the same as Bosch. No microchannel needs TXV. I know Bosch is made by Medea. It's not made by Gree. So I don't know that it's exactly the same. But maybe they do have very similar, if not the same technology that was. I'm very familiar with Bosch. I'm not so familiar with the Gree Flex. Bear with me. Crazy. Getting over a cold. Sorry, guys. Nicholas says, do you see a lot of homes adding in air cleaners on the furnaces along with UV sterilizers? Are they useful? And maybe I'm thinking of adding an air exchanger. I like my air clean. Thoughts? I'm thinking of adding an air exchanger. So I think some of the verbiage you're using, I think you're talking about maybe adding some ventilation, which I think is a good thing. As far as air cleaners, it depends on which one you're looking at. I think we all have our preferences. The main issue I have with a lot of the air cleaners on the market is the same issue that I had with electronic and electrostatic, but electronic filters years ago. And that was, I felt like, and I didn't just come up with this. Actually, the guy that I learned under, this is something he used to say, and was kind of ingrained in me. And that is, a lot of homeowners thought these electronic air filters, were so great. They were, sold on it. And what ended up happening is, I would say most, and I think it would be safe to say most homeowners don't maintain the electronic air filters or the cells inside of them like they should. And they have this false expectation of thinking that the filter is cleaning the air when it's not. And I think that's the issue I have with a lot of products on the market when they require a certain level of maintenance and they're not being maintained properly. And it's not always the homeowner's fault. It could be who is maintaining the system for them. So if they've hired a heating and air company and they're not doing things properly. Sorry, I'm reading some of the other comments. I would say that, my 10-second commercial is, I do like the iWave or the other product that New Calgon has, that I think it's called New Shield. They've got this flipper on there that kind of spins, and I don't want to say it's no maintenance on the ionizer, but it's very low in comparison. And then I do like UV lights. I like products that have less need for maintenance. So when you're talking about these fancy filters, high filtration, electronic filters, all that sort of stuff, when they're not maintained properly, the homeowners just, they're just not getting what they paid for is what I think. So, ultimately, I would just look at that as you're looking at some of the products on the market. Arch, what's up, pal? Good to see you. Brian says, brand not supported in my area, then I have a hard time selling. Same here. Emery, what's up? What is the purpose of a TXV and why don't they have EM on older units? So a TXV is just a metering device. It's unlike in the days used to have these pistons where they were essentially orifices, and they had this tiny little hole in there, and it would meter the refrigerant that was going through there. And then when TXVs came out, they're literally a valve that will meter the refrigerant and change based on the temperature of the coil. So they became a whole lot more efficient, keeping that coil working better. And so it's simply a valve in there that meters the refrigerant. And we've done videos on TXVs, EXVs, and some of the other metering devices out there. And, they simply just, to answer your question on why they're not on some of the older units, they weren't invented yet. So they were invented at some point, and then they started putting them on higher SEER equipment. And then now, even, if you fast forward to today, all systems are supposed to have some sort of, whether it's a TXV, EXV, or some other valve. Pistons are supposed to be, I believe, now I could be wrong with the northern states, but definitely here in the South, with the new government EPA standards, where systems are, or is it EPA or DOE standards, they're supposed to be above a certain SEER 2 level, and not having a TXV on there would not reach those levels. So Nicholas says, my rental home has an ancient AC unit outside, but still works is like 20 years old. Should I replace or keep using it until it dies? I mean, are you paying the electric bill? If you're not, if your renter is, maybe you're, that sounds horrible, but you wouldn't be the only landlord on the planet that, has a less efficient system in there. And if it's still working and it's doing well, you might keep it. I have customers with systems that are older than that and won't replace them because of one reason or another. So let's see. Brian says we lost a compressor with Bosch. Interesting. Bosch and Gree are not the same. Brian, I'm just curious, did you have a surge protector on that system that the compressor failed? Because we have not had any big issues like that, but we also, every single inverter system, no matter the brand, Bosch, Daikin, any other brand, we do surge protection in our area, especially. And then in some cases, we'll even go one step further and do phase monitors. Arch says, I was going to go with a Rheem 3.5 ton 16 SEER package heat pump, but it's not available in my area. There is only a Daikin DP5HM package unit, but it's only available in 3 or 4 ton, but not 3.5 ton. Should we go with the 3 or 4 ton for our 1469 square foot single story home? Our current system is a 3.5 ton 12 Tempstar package heat pump on our roof. Arch, I can't answer that, buddy. I would have to defer to your local pro on that. I could tell you where I live, humidity is a big deal. If I remember correctly, you're out in Arizona or somewhere like that where it's not as big of a deal. And usually oversizing heating and air systems, humidity plays a big role in that. So where I live near the coast of Virginia, I would not even go up a half a ton from what it should be, unless it's a variable speed, inverter system of some type. So yeah, I would just, defer to your local pro on that. Let's see. Still use pistons, Brian says. Arch says, thanks for the explanation on TXV. I was wondering the same thing. Brian says, in apartments, sometimes maintenance costs more than electricity. Yep. Ryan says, I have a crawl space and attic with ductwork in both places. I want to install a whole house dehumidifier. Where should I put the dehumidifier, and should it connect to my ductwork or be separate? Good question. I just went over this with a customer this week. Every house is different. And so it's really hard to answer that question. I can tell you that there are times that if a home does have a musty crawl space, that I will put the dehumidifier there and not connect it to the ductwork. I can tell you that of all of the dehumidifiers that we've seen connected to the ductwork, some do great, some don't. we've had to disconnect them from the ductwork before and just have them in the crawl space, but I've never, and so far, knock on wood, but I've never had one in a crawl space not connected to the ductwork and have to go back and connect it to the ductwork. So I don't know if that tells you anything. Now, where you are located will play a role in all of that, but in general, here in Virginia, near a humid coast, where houses deal with humidity a lot, especially if I've got a conditioned crawl space or an encapsulated crawl space, I'm going to do a dehumidifier in that crawl space. But I will say every house is different, so maybe get a couple opinions from some local pros. Brian says it will with a piston, not my favorite, but Arch says, yes, it's dry heat out here. Nice. So yeah, Arch, you might be okay with going up to that 4. It's just hard to say. Brian says, absolutely right. At Richmond Airport, like the helicopter is 400 feet away for National Guard. The one next to it is still fine. Nicholas says, I hear the quality of HVAC comes in how it's installed, not necessarily the brands used. Is that true? For the most part, yes, that's true. I would worry less about the brand and find a really good contractor and go with the brand that they know, like, and will stand behind. Brian says supply duct for output return can have options. Arch says ours old unit uses R22 and was told by manufacturer that 410 may require more tonnage for a package heat pump. Is this true? The tonnage should not change based on the refrigerant. The capacity your home needs is the capacity that your home needs. Based on a heat load calculation, heat loss, all that good stuff. In my opinion, that should not change. Now, do some refrigerants remove heat better than others? Yes. Some refrigerants are more efficient than others, but the capacity based on, if you have a manufacturer telling you, well, this is a different refrigerant, so you need to do this or that, they might be just telling you that to sell you the system. Again, guys, if you're just joining us, I'm getting over a cold, so I apologize for the throat clearing. Arctic Frost says, I got a brand new AC. The AC doesn't cool the house nearly as good as the 30-year-old unit. The 30-year-old one house was built without an AC in the mind first. Why does it feel less cool even though we got a more efficient AC? Could be your thermostat, Arctic. You may have been used to setting the thermostat at 72, and now you need to set it down at 71 to get the same temperature, if that makes sense. Maybe the thermostat itself is why it feels warmer in there, because it literally is. Now, if you said to me, well, my old system used to blow the curtains back and it just threw all this air in here super fast, and this new system just doesn't throw out as much air. Now, it does keep temperature, it does reach, and it is the same temperature in here, but it just doesn't blow as hard as it used to. Well, that's by design. Newer systems with the variable speed capabilities will at times be barely running, and it's not gonna blow like your old system used to if it does have a variable speed motor. So just a couple things to think about there. Ryan says, would you recommend installing a cheap inverter unit installed by a pro or a non-inverter unit from a premium brand that is less efficient? Where do we draw the line between technology and brand? Interesting question. Let me just think about your question here for a second. Would you recommend installing a cheap inverter unit installed by a pro or a non-inverter unit from a premium brand that is less efficient? Where do we draw the line between technology and brand? Well, I guess, Ryan, I would ask, which brands are you talking about? I will say that if you're comparing, let's just pick a brand out. So let's say if you're comparing, say, a Carrier inverter, Infinity inverter system to Carrier's builder grade brand, which is Payne, would I tell you to go with let's see, Payne doesn't make an inverter system, so that's actually not a good comparison. Yeah, it just kind of depends, pal. I think I understand what you're asking. Would it be better to go with a more premium brand, more reliable would be the thought, and go with a lesser end system because you're getting the more reliable, right? Versus going with that cheaper inverter system, higher SEER, cost savings, and etc. And that's tough to answer. It just depends on the situation. Which brands are you actually talking about? Gary says, can you tell us about the new Daikin compressor? I'm not sure which compressor you're talking about. The swing compressor has been out for years. It might be new to certain markets, but you may know something I don't. I actually just emailed with a few folks from Daikin today, but maybe you have something, that I don't as far as news. But I'm not aware of anything that's, actually new industry wise from a compressor standpoint. So maybe it's just new to your area or something. I'm not sure, but they do have their swing compressor that are way more reliable than a typical scroll compressor, or at least they should be, because there's less moving parts. They have this technology where they literally took two pieces in a typical scroll compressor that would normally, mechanically touch one another and turned it all into one piece. So it's, less refrigerant escaping through there. And also you would hope, because of less components, less breakdowns. And the swing compressor is quite reliable, at least from the statistics that I have heard. Now, have I seen any statistics that compare it one-on-one against a scroll? Maybe not, but I can tell you they've had very few fail, especially if they're installed properly. They're quite reliable. I know their inverter systems, they have very few failures on the compressor anyway. Arch says, I live in a small town and there are not a lot of pros around here, so I have to do my homework. I hear you. I help people on our new HVAC guide all the time. And I helped a lady out in Utah one time. She literally had three companies in her area, and one of them wouldn't call her back. So her options were limited. Let's put it that way. Nicholas said, should return ducts always be placed near the ceiling for better air circulation? Not necessarily. I like them being closer to the ceiling or higher up from the floor, just because they won't pick up as much dirt. If you have pets or, you're walking through, and that, let's just say the return duct, the return filter grill was right by the front door where it's always opening and people walking by it, it's going to get dirty a whole lot quicker than, say, one that is, in the ceiling and on the other side of the house kind of thing, right? But should return ducts always be placed near the ceiling? No. I mean, every house is different. Gary says, who has their heat pump running right now? Mine is on here on the first floor. It is 58 right now in Massachusetts. Nice 72 degrees downstairs. Mitsubishi 12K BTU doing its thing. I'm not running heat here in Virginia. I can tell you that. It got right warm today. Nicholas says, when renovating houses, do you usually install new ductwork through the walls or add mini splits in areas, or is every situation different? Every situation is different. We don't do a lot of new construction, but we have certain builders that won't use anybody else but us. So when they call us, we'll go in, and at times we'll replace ductwork. Sometimes we'll reuse some of the ductwork. Sometimes we'll reuse all the ductwork. It just depends. And then, of course, in certain situations, we'll do mini splits. I've got one customer that we did a VRV life. It was the first VRV life that we ever did. And we put a pancake air handler in one part of the house. We did a wall hung in another part of the house. And then we did a floor mount in 2 rooms. So that was an interesting, kind of a fun install for us because it was kind of all new. And, we've done several VRV lives since then, but that was a lot of fun. Gary says it was the swing compressor. First I heard of it. Thanks for the explanation, Josh. Yeah, the swing compressor is pretty sweet. It's one of the things when I hear other people say, "Oh, I like this brand over here," which is fine. Everybody has their preferences based on their own experiences, but I do like when companies have something that no one else has. And I like to know what it is. Why do they have that? What's so great about it? So I think that's one of the cool things that Daikin does have that no one else has. Arch says, I talked to Daikin and was told that they use their own scroll compressors in their residential package heat pumps and not Copeland compressors. How reliable are the Daikin made compressors? If you're talking about the swing compressor, they are banging. If installed right, I think you'd be surprised at how reliable they are. Arctic Frost says, does the attic fan make a difference in the house temperature? Every house is different, but I've had customers that we've told them you need to get an attic fan. And today they make solar powered attic fans. So you disconnect it from the electric, you put your, usually we'll have a roofer put it in there. We don't even do them, but we'll tell them to get a handyman or a roofer. They'll put those solar ones on there. They only run during the day. They don't run at night. So, they're not loud when you're trying to sleep or anything like that. And they'll pull that heat right out of there. And we've had people tell us that it affected their utility bills, that not only is the attic fan not running off electricity, but it's pulling all that heat out of there, out of that attic. And they've seen a big difference on their electric bill. Arch says they have a lot of work around here installing HVAC in new homes and commercial refrigeration. So a heat pump replacement for a homeowner isn't a priority until business tanks, and then they call you. Interesting. What a pickle you're in. If you don't mind sharing, where are you at out there? Just out of curiosity. I'm wondering if you're in the same area this lady was that I helped, or at least close to there. I'm going to take a break from the comments right now. Ryan, we'll get to you in just a second, pal. And I want to step away real quick while looks like we've got just over 20 folks here on our chat and our live show right now. And I don't know how many of those are on YouTube and how many are on Facebook, but we're streaming to both right now. And while we're here, I want to take a moment to show you, because I've never done this, but I do have a website that I do talk about from time to time. And one of the things that I talk about usually is, what we do for customers on our website, New HVAC Guide, but I don't normally talk about enough all the other things that are on this website. So if you've never heard me talk about it, this website is it's essentially where I wrote a book, as if I were to sit down like an author and write a book on all the ins and outs, the garbage, the BS, the secrets, everything that I could think of to help tell a homeowner when they're buying a heating and air system, what I would say to them, right? But the problem with writing a book would be that it would become outdated pretty quickly. When I first started writing this New HVAC Guide, SEER 2 wasn't even a thing. That was something that came along after. So anyway, I've got this website, and so it's a step-by-step process on buying a heating and air system. If somebody's in the market for one, they could, sign up for this and get access and read through the guide. But what I don't talk about enough is all the things. If you scroll to the bottom, now at the top, there's a few things like, some products that we recommend and things like that. But down here at the bottom is a bunch of things that I don't talk about enough. The first one being, we do have financing on that website. Now, I don't know if I don't control it. I don't. It's through a company that we've partnered with called M Lend Financial. I don't know if they're good rates, bad rates. I think they do go up and down based on the market. So probably these days they're not as good as they used to be, but they've got some options on there. They've got some options with people that have good credit. They've got options for folks that have bad credit and so on. But they have options that if you have a home renovation, whether it's heating and air related or not, that if you were to click right there on financing, you could apply and get up to $100,000 for a home renovation project. And they do it through different types of financing as well, credit cards, loans, different things like that. We also have a little store down here that I think I only got a few items on there now. I'd gotten up to like 10 or so items and I took a few off. But this is just a place that I have a little store there that you can purchase things that you might not be able to find anywhere else, So that's why I'm not even really interested in having a store. But if folks can't find it anywhere else, then maybe they could purchase it from us. Below that is I do have a group, if you will. It's actually a couple groups. We have Zoom calls every night, and I meet with other business owners where we will talk about all kinds of things, some struggles, some wins, and it's been nice. It's not one of those motivational coaches and accountability or any of that. A lot of the guys on there, some of them have successful businesses already. A couple of them are just guys that are getting started or hoping to get started at some point. And, it's just a place where we can meet and, they can join a group and be in a group of about 6 or 8 other folks that are going through the same things they are. And that's something that we offer. If you go to the right there, we have what I call our resource center. And the first thing there was I found out years ago that there were heat and air companies that would tell customers your system's not under warranty. And the customers were at their mercy. They might have said, well, I thought it probably should still be under warranty, but if you're saying it's not, then it's not. And so if you click this and you check your warranty, no matter your brand. Now, let me back up. There are a few brands when you click there that they don't let you check your warranty. They don't have that capability, or they're a company like Lennox and they won't let you check it because you're not a pro. So Lennox is one of the companies. I did a video on that. Hopefully they changed that. They used to have it to where the homeowner, at least I think they did, where the homeowner could check their own warranty. And most of the other brands on here, if you click that, you can check your own warranties. Beside that, we've got our blog. I do post to that from time to time, just new things. Usually it's videos that we put on our YouTube channel, but we also post some other things on there as well. Beside that is a free home maintenance checklist you can click, and we'll send you that. It's basically a sheet that gives you every 6 months you should do this. Every 12 months you should do that. Every month you should do, and it's basically a checklist for homeowners. It's free, and you can have that sent to you, and that way you're not missing anything. You wouldn't believe how many folks have never cleaned their fridge coils, and because of that, their fridge is drawing more electricity. It's just like a heating and air system. And below that, I'm not going to go through each and everything left on here, but you'll see some brands down there and some of the things they offer, including energy calculators, pricing guides, and other things there. And then before all of that, between the checklist that we talked about and those brands, we have a place where if you're looking for a manual, a warranty, whatever, and you need some help, if you sign up for our guide for the proper package, if you will, we'll take the time to help you find that. And then, of course, beside that is you could click on it and go to the HRI website and try to get your certificate. That's also something that for folks that are on certain plans on our site, we will, look up for them as well. So anyway, we add stuff to this website all the time. this is just probably most of it. There are a few other things that I didn't go over, but I wanted to talk about that because that's not something I've ever done. Maybe we'll do that again at some point. But especially if new stuff comes out. But I wanted to take a moment and show you guys that because I don't think I'd ever really done that. And maybe I'll do a video on that, just kind of going through each and every little thing, so that way folks can see all of that. My whole point with building that website, and I built it, I built 99% of it myself, was to have a place that would actually legitimately help homeowners when they're, going through some of the things you guys go through. So anyway, back to our chat. We're going to wrap up here soon, guys. So make sure you get your questions in there. We're going to try to wrap up as close to 9:30 as possible. Might go over a little bit, but with this voice of mine, I'm sure you guys are probably tired of hearing it. Ryan says pros like communicating systems, but some brands like Mitsubishi don't have communicating units and still held in high regards. Why doesn't Mitsubishi get the same treatment for not having communicating? Ryan, I don't know where you got that, pal, but I would say it's the opposite. 90% of the stuff that Mitsubishi has is communicating. And all of their mini split stuff has been communicating technology, or at least most of it. There might be exceptions to that, but for the most part, all of their stuff is communicating. They might have some air handlers. I know they partnered with Train on some stuff. So maybe you're talking about, those air handlers that have the polycarbonate material. I don't know, but for the most part, their stuff does have communicating technology. Esoteric One says, I have an AEPF with a permanent filter, but it is blocked by PVC. No bueno. What happened? Not sure what to say, buddy. Maybe give me a little context there. Ryan says, I heard someone say that vents need to be pointed at the windows or a certain direction, not pointed directly on you. Is that true? It's just about comfort. A lot of times guys will install vents in a way to where it's not blowing directly on the homeowner, depending on situation. Like if it's their bedroom, for example, or if it's a living room, you try to keep that in mind when you're installing the supply vents. Bob says, with adequate air intakes, roof ventilators can lower attic temperatures by 20 degrees, easing AC use and costly electricity. Very true. Arch says, will a 1-ton, 110 mini split use a significant more electricity than a 220? Significant. I mean, they do have a higher amp rating typically on the breaker. If I remember correctly. I mean, I don't install a lot of 120 volt mini splits, but we have priced them, and I think I put a few in years ago in a campground. We had a few campground customers that needed them. But is it significantly more? I mean, I'm not saying, I think mini splits in general are going to be more efficient, than your average system, your average heating and air system. Well, in general, exceptions to every rule. Nicholas says, is air duct cleaning important to do every few years, especially with pets? Yeah, Nicholas, that's one of those things that you hear guys argue about all the time. There's never been any clinical tests, proven lab tests that prove that duct cleaning improves the air quality that you're breathing in your home. But even if that's not true, even if that's true, I would always argue that, it's just like if you go into a home that is dirty versus a home that is cleaned, daily or weekly. I think that there are homes that simply have an odor, or they have less healthy air to breathe, So I think duct cleaning is important, but that's just my 2 cents. There are other heating and air guys that don't believe in it at all. They don't think it's necessary. Ryan says, I would like to see more information on labor warranties, how they work. Are they offered by manufacturers, third parties, or contractors, which is more cost effective for the customer? Yeah, Ryan, that's a whole deal in itself. In fact, I did a video on this and the options that you have when you have systems installed and the extended warranties. If you haven't seen that video, I would check that out. But we use a third party company called JB Warranties for our extended warranties, and there's a couple reasons for that. I'm not going to go through all of that. I think that what's important is the contractor that you select that does the installation, whatever they use. I would ask them a few questions. Some of those being, if you go out of business, what happens to my warranty? Who has to make the warranty claim? Do I have to make it, or do you? Things like that. Does it cover everything? Does it cover the refrigerant? Does it cover certain repairs? And you can be as specific as you want. And, the contractor, they should be able to back up any of those answers with documentation, something in writing. But some manufacturers do offer extended labor warranties. Some don't, some do. Ryan says, does the labor warranty only kick in during a warranty claim? Yes, for the most part, at least the companies we work with, yes. Mitsubishi uses Honeywell looking thermostats. That's why I thought it wasn't communicating. Guess not. Again, some of their systems are non-communicating, but a lot of their higher SEER stuff, especially the inverter stuff, is communicating. It just depends on what the system is. So, like, for example, if it's some sort of mini split, it might have a thermostat that, like what you're describing, and it might communicate, just like your remote control. You can tell the system with your remote control, hey, I want it to be this temperature, and I want it to be, this mode, heat, cool, whatever. And that's non-communicating technology. But the indoor and outdoor units still have communicating technology to talk to one another. The outdoor unit can say to the indoor unit, hey, I've got a problem here. Or it could say, hey, it's not that hot today. We don't need to ramp up that high. Things like that. Gary says, have a good evening. Fun as always. Hope you get back to 100%. See you next Tuesday. Have a good night, Gary. We are going to wrap up in just a moment. Muhammad says, I have new unit installed tomorrow. What should I pay attention to ensure good installation? That's a loaded question. I would definitely have everything in writing. So, have a contract. Other than that, there are things like I did a whole series on bad installs. If you maybe watch a few of those videos, and the series basically says, we always hear that the install matters so much more than the brand. What's some examples of some bad installation practices? And I did some videos on that. Things like making sure they braze with nitrogen, make sure they, don't set the outdoor unit too close to the house. Make sure that, they install float switches on the indoor unit, things like that. So check out that series if you've never seen that. Wes Merrick. My brother's name is Wesley. Wes says, had a 3-ton Daikin fit heat pump installed. Nice. Along with a 97% Daikin gas furnace a few weeks ago. Keep getting a B3 error. Something about a blower motor in a limiting state. Any ideas? Installer has been out a few times and tested the ductwork and says the static pressure is fine at a 0.4 and isn't sure what is going on. So the B3 error is a code for how much airflow is going through the system. I would say the next time you get it, try if you have some sort of media filter. I don't know where he's doing his static pressure tests, but it maybe remove that filter and see if that changes anything. We had a system years ago that we were getting a B3 error, but it was actually an issue with the valve. And I'm trying to remember the exact order of operations on trying to remember exactly why it was getting that error because of the airflow. But ultimately, it was the valve that was causing the issue. So a fan motor not coming on, maybe changing the profile. But the B3 error on a fit is airflow typically. I'm trying to remember why that valve was causing that error. I'm trying to remember the order of operations of how we got that. But I'm just drawing a blank right now, and I apologize for that. But I do know that particular customer, we had to do an LP kit because they had propane gas versus natural gas. So, I'm just drawing a blank right now on that entire situation. But I do remember the B3 error coming through a lot with that particular customer until we narrowed it down. But, don't give up on him. Usually, especially if he's checking static pressures, maybe have him call his local Daikin rep and they can get to the bottom of this for you. Usually once you get the kinks worked out with the fit, we don't usually get callbacks on them. So Chris says, just found this amazing channel. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate the kind words. I am looking at getting a 5-ton and torn between the fit and the DX9 VC. Humidity control is an issue. I know both use the same air handler, but different compressors. Thoughts? They both use the same technology. I don't think they both use the same air handler. So the fit usually uses the FEC, and I think the DX9 you're going to have a couple options on your air handlers. But I would just say that they both use the same technology. And as far as humidity control, I mean, I don't think you're going to see a big difference. Obviously, the fit's going to be a little less efficient only because that coil is smaller outside. But essentially, it's the same technology. They've basically took that, inverter technology and squeezed it down into a little fit, So I think, as far as the humidity control, just having them set it up correctly, they can change some of the trim, they can adjust the airflow, and there's things that when they're setting it up, they can make sure that it's regardless of which one you go with. If you get the the Daikin 1 thermostat, you can set it up to remove more humidity versus others. So Ryan says, have a great night. Have a good night, Ryan. As always, Ryan's one of our regulars every week. Thank you for being so helpful, answering our questions. Of course, thank you guys for tuning in. I know it's late on a Tuesday night for some of you guys, so I don't take it for granted that you're here looking at this fat face. Wes says, thank you. Appreciate the words of wisdom. Thank you for the kind words. We are going to wrap up, but I wrap up every episode with the same thing. So if you've answered this question before, please answer it again. And that is, if you have a great heating and air company local to you that you can give a shout out to, please drop their name in our chat and where they're located, what, city and state they're in, and that way, or area they cover. So that way they're getting, we're going to give the good companies good shout outs and, bless the companies that are doing things right. So if you have a good heating and air company that you think highly of local to you, please give them a shout out. Chris says Weather Makers in Miami, Florida. So shout out to Weather Makers. Arch says, as soon as I find one and they do a good job replacing our heat pump, I'll let you know. Good enough. Yeah. Arch, I don't know if you ever told me where you're at out there in the West, but please let me know. Cause if you're near where that, lady is that I helped, then maybe I can, point you in a couple of directions. I don't know. Get some cough syrup. Yes, sir. Arch says, thank you. Thank you. Ryan says, unlimited residential air in Charlotte metro area. So shout out to Unlimited. You're doing some good things. I feel like Ryan's been here quite often and says you guys are great. So shout out to you. Gary says, as always, A plus in Westfield, Massachusetts. So shout out to them. And Arch, what part of Arizona are you in, if you don't mind me asking? If you do mind, I totally get it. But if I'm curious if you're near, trying to remember. Let me look up one thing here. So the lady that I helped was near. Oh no, never mind. She's not near Arizona. She was near Moab, Utah, and we ended up having to find a guy way up in Grand Junction, Colorado. I think is where the guy that ended up helping her. So unfortunately, I don't know that I could help you, pal. But she had a hard time finding a good company, and we ended up finding a guy that helped her out, like I say, over the state line. Ended up helping her. So anyway, so I don't think I could help you anyway. I apologize. Near Tucson, yeah. So you're way south compared to her. So anyway, guys, make it a great week. Thank you for watching. Please hit that subscribe button if you don't mind. We're going to get to 100,000 subscribers, and then I'll be able to approach. I feel like 100K is that number, right? For you to be able to go to some of the big companies out there and say, hey, I'm a big deal. I'm not a big deal yet, but when we get to 100K subscribers, maybe I'll be a little bit more of a big deal and be able to say to those companies, let's see behind the scenes on a few things. I forgot to I'm going to wait till next week now because it looks like some folks have already signed off, but I do have a big announcement. We are going to be touring behind the scenes somewhere this fall. And maybe July. I haven't ironed out the details yet, but anyway, I'm looking. Ryan says, looking forward to that big surprise. Yeah. So yeah. And we're going to do some videos. It's not just me going there. We're going to do videos behind the scenes and show you guys some stuff that maybe you've never seen anywhere else. So Brad says, do I know any good companies in Cincinnati? Unfortunately, I don't know anybody in Cincinnati. I have a friend of mine that's from Cincinnati. He was a big realtor out there, but he now lives in Nashville. But yeah, so we're going to get to 100,000 subscribers. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't yet so we can get there quicker and I can go to some of these different companies and maybe show you guys some things when we hit that mark. I feel like that's kind of the mark we need to be at, or at least close to it, before I can kind of have those big shot calls, if you will. So hit that subscribe button. Make it a great week. We'll see you next week, Tuesday night, 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. So if you're not on the East Coast, find out what that time is for you, and we'll see you then. Thank you.